Dick and Andrew Woods, who operate the family business behind Finches Friend bird feeders, prioritise the health of garden birds in the design of their products. A passionate designer, Dick set out to revolutionise bird feeding practices by confronting the disease and contamination risks that exist wherever we feed our garden birds. Not only do their feeders separate the food from contact with birds' feet, they also encourage us to maintain good feeder hygiene by providing easy clean solutions through their innovative feeder design. In this episode, Dick and Andrew tell me about their latest product, the Cleaner Peanut Feeder. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I take pleasure in watching the wild birds around me, wherever I am. In my show, I share the joy of birding. I tell you about the birds I've seen, speak with experts and enthusiasts, go on bird outings, and I share stories from birders around the world. Last episode, I shared my first experiences of the stunning birds I encountered in Panama City, along with my husband John and our professional bird guide Edwin. Do take a listen. If you have a garden or other outside space where you can provide supplementary food for birds, you'll know how enjoyable it is to watch the various species that visit. Something we don't always think about is how to keep our birds healthy while they're enjoying the food treats. And while we may have the intention to keep our feeders sparkling clean and feeding areas free from mould, how many of us take the time to clean them on a regular basis? The products from Finches Friend go a long way to helping us do just that. I first came across them at Global Bird Fair in 2022. While looking around the Finches Friend stand, I was intrigued to see a hanging tube feeder with an innovative design. Two aspects of the design stood out: an enclosed reservoir which is weatherproof and keeps the seed dry, and the feeding area is easily removed for cleaning. I learned that the designer, inventor and engineer Dick Woods, founded his company with the goal of providing a way to prevent disease spreading through garden bird populations, while still enjoying the visits of birds to his feeders. His feeder designs were born out of a genuine concern for bird welfare and a commitment to responsible bird feeding practices. You can hear more about this in episode 119, Food, Feet and Feces, the key to keeping our garden birds healthy. The link is in the episode notes. I've been using the Cleaner Feeder, as they're called, for the past year, and have seen for myself how easy it is to clean and how the design keeps birds' feet and poop, one of the main pathways in spreading disease, away from the seed in the feeding area. Finches Friend recently launched their newest design, the Cleaner Peanut Feeder. Full disclosure, they sent me a feeder to try out with my own garden birds, and once again I've been really impressed with the novel way the peanuts are presented to the birds and the ease of cleaning the feeder. I asked Dick and Andrew about the design elements that make the Cleaner Feeder range stand out as the choice for those who want to provide supplementary feeding to their garden birds while reducing the risk of spreading disease. Andrew and Dick, it's wonderful to speak to you again. Last year you produced the Finches Friend Cleaner Feeder, and it's a type of feeder that allows the seed to be kept separate from where the birds feed and stand. It's quite a novel design, and they've been a complete success. They're very easy to take apart to clean. They keep the food dry, and the birds love them, especially the smaller birds. The bigger birds obviously don't love them because they can't get to the seed. If we could just recap a little bit on how you came to design the feeders in the first place, and whichever one of you wishes to speak. I know Dick's the brains behind the engineering aspect, and Andrew, are you the brains behind the marketing?
I'm not sure I'm the brains behind anything. I'm the dog's body. That's my place in this area. But I help him out a little bit in that world.
But it is a family business.
It is, yeah. There's, as you say, Dad's obviously the brains behind the products themselves, and he's got a history in engineering, not necessarily retail product development or bird feeders. This is a bit of a new thing for us all. And yeah, as you say, I help out a bit with the website and social media and customer services and anything that all the fun stuff.
So Dick, could you tell us how you came to develop your first feeder?
Yeah, for sure. So Really, this goes back to some 5, 6, 7 years ago, where we had a bout of disease called trichomoniasis in our garden. We, at the time, fed lots and lots of greenfinches. For some reason, they were almost exclusively what visited. And we had this really horrible situation where day after day we were finding them dead. We didn't know anything about the disease. So based upon that, I researched it and learned about trichomoniasis. And the research that's out there is very clear, and it is transferred on wild bird feeders, and it's transferred bird to bird effectively. It's transferred in saliva. So as birds that are unable to feed because they have a lesion in their throat, which is how the disease progresses, stops them from being able to swallow, they salivate, and the saliva that gets left around the ports on the feeders becomes infected. So once I'd learned that, I thought, well, there must be a better way to feed the birds, and it took quite some years from there to actually get to the point of a product. So it was something that played on my mind for some time, and then eventually we started to create product a couple of years ago.
So, yes, I remember you saying last time that your mantra was food, feces and feet, and the idea was to keep the feet and feces away from food, which other feeders don't do. You either have open feeders where ground feeding birds can get to, but of course anything can walk across the seed and be spreading contaminants. As you said as well about the saliva being left behind on the feeder for the next bird to pick up and pass on. And I'd absolutely seen this disease in my own garden birds several times. And it's so tragic to see it, and then heartrending to think that we might be contributing to it by having feeders that, to be honest, we're supposed to clean very frequently, but they're very difficult to get apart. And actually you need a nice hot day or a sunny day, because who wants to stand in the rain trying to clean a feeder? So of course you put it off. And I was just as guilty of neglecting that bit, enjoying the fact that I was having birds come into my garden, but neglecting to clean the feeders that they were on. Now, you came up with the cleaner feeder, which has a reservoir of seed, and then uses a kind of hopper system to drop that seed into the area where the birds would feed. And there's a perch for the birds to sit on, so there's no need for them to be sitting on the seed. And if there are any ill birds around, hopefully they're not passing on any of that illness, but it's reducing the exposure that birds would have to this.
So we don't pretend that we can actually stop trichomoniasis. We can't. All we can do is make the feeders easy to clean, and in the event that a sick bird has fed on a Finches Friend feeder, the main body of food is separated from the food that's actually available that could become infected. And as a result of that, we are confident that cleaned regularly, we can be the best that it's possible to be.
I think it's also worth kind of bearing in mind that as we've gone through this process, it's not just trichomoniasis that is transmitted on bird feeders. There's a lot of other parasites and diseases that can be shared on them. And the nature of keeping the food in a sealed container so that it's dry, because moisture is a really big, for any sort of disease and bacteria, moisture is a big kind of issue with spreading it. And also having the rain gutter across the top of where the feeding area is. You mentioned at the start that it's small birds that use the feeders and not the bigger ones. And we do sometimes get some questions about, is it big enough for the birds to feed from? And we're always quick to say, yes, the smaller birds can feed from there. But that also helps to keep, even though it's separated from the main feed body, where they actually are feeding from, the rain can't get in at that bit either. And what these principles have meant is that other diseases and other bacteria are also less likely to kind of spread on the feeders as a consequence, compared to side port feeders where rain can get in the side and that type of thing.
I was going to echo that, because what I had noticed with my feeders in the past is, if you have several days of rain, as we have had recently, the feeders with ports, they can't help but let rain in. And you can end up with mould building up inside. It looks like there's still food waiting to be eaten, but if you actually go and empty the food out, you'll see it's a horrible big mouldy clump. And it's, in the past I've been guilty. I've left stuff there thinking, oh yeah, there's food in there. And then when I've eventually got round to think, well, actually it's been there quite a long time, why aren't they eating it? It's been quite shocking. And yes, with the cleaner feeder, that doesn't happen. The food is always kept dry. And I know I sound like an advert for it, but honestly, I have been really impressed with the way the feeder works. And in terms of bird size, the largest bird that I've had that regularly comes to feed from it is a blackbird. It's learned how to jump up on a flower bed, and if it jumps in just the right way, it can get there and hang on and get some seed. So it's been feeding quite happily. And that's probably the largest size bird I've had on the feeder.
It's quite interesting that, because one of the things we experience is birds in their different ways in different gardens around the country. And I'm up in Yorkshire and Dad's down in Kent, so we have different birds. And I also have a blackbird which feeds more around fledging time than any other. She doesn't really bother too much unless the babies are around. But the same with the starlings. Young starlings feed on mine at fledging time, but not for the rest of the year. And I've got quite a lot of starlings here. We get questions all the time from people saying, will birds do this? Will birds do that? As I said before, one of my parts is talking with customers and giving feedback. And one of the hardest things with wild animals is going back and giving a definitive answer. It's, yes, but, or no, but. Certainly any bird smaller than that can get on. I have a woodpecker as well, great spotted woodpecker, which did feed on the seed feeder, but since the peanut feeder's come along, it's not really bothered too much with the seeds anymore. It's happier with the peanuts.
Yes, I've recently received my peanut feeder and I've put it out there, and so far a blue tit has fed from it, but nothing else. But I hold hopes that I'll get a great spotted woodpecker. I've never seen them in my area, but I have this fantastic feeder. I will have one.
Yeah.
Susie, just before we leave the subject of conventional tube feeders, there's a thought that I'd just like to kind of convey. And this is a pretty scary bit of science. So the trichomanoa parasite can remain viable for up to 48 hours in damp food. So when you go back to the tube feeder you were talking about and the port that's claggy and horrible, effectively, if a sick bird is fed on that feeder and the parasite is deposited in the food, any time over the next 2 days, that parasite can be presented from a different port in a different part of the feeder as the food drops. So the whole concept of tube feeders is really flawed and of great concern to me.
Now, you came up with this design for the cleaner feeder. You, as an engineer, had thought through what materials you would use, but you also thought about what humans are like and how they would use the feeders. Can you tell us a little bit about that merging of the human use and what you could provide in terms of engineering?
I don't believe generally that the message of cleaning is conveyed very well by the industry, if you like, the side of the business that's actually selling these products. And likewise, the bird magazines and everything else. It tends to be paid some kind of annual visit or something where there's an article that says, "Oh, clean your feeders." But my view is that if we really are going to expect people to do it, we have to make it simple and convenient. Everyone is busy. The last thing in the world on a Sunday afternoon that you feel like when you finally get a chance to stop and sit down and watch the football or whatever happens to be your weakness is go and clean a bird feeder. And people don't have one. They have several. To genuinely do the job properly on 2, 3, 4 tube feeders and a peanut feeder or something, you're probably talking about 3 hours work. And anybody who really thinks that people will do that weekly is really dreaming. So we've reduced that to a situation where you can wander around 2 or 3 feeders, change the feed stations or wash them in minutes. And that's the key. We have to get the message out, but we also have to make it easy and convenient to do.
Yeah, they really are very easy to take apart. The bottom part comes away. That's so simple to clean and dry and put back on again. And then you just give it a twist and the reservoir allows the seed to drop back down into it and you're ready to go. So You're not depriving the birds of any seed at all while you're cleaning it out. It's very quick, just a few minutes, there and done. Now, you've also produced some other types of feeders. You produced a window feeder, which was the first thing that I saw on your stand at Bird Fair last year. But now you've just developed this peanut feeder. Could you tell us about the peanut feeder and what went into the design of that?
So peanuts is an area that I've wanted to visit for a long time. Any conventional peanut feeder is absolutely bound to enable the peanuts to get wet. And that in itself is obviously an issue. So we basically wanted to create a feeder that kept the peanuts dry. We wanted to feed them in age order. So that issue where on a conventional peanut feeder, you've got a tube which is accessed from the outside at any point in its height, but the core of peanuts in the middle is simply sitting there slowly going rotten. And then we wanted to try and improve foot contact. That's really quite difficult because by their very nature, the birds are gripping onto the area that they're feeding from. But if we could cut foot contact by 50 or 60%, which is what I think we do, then we are stopping the potential of feces on the birds' floors from actually accessing the food that we're trying to give them. So that's the concept. The food is always remaining dry. Inside there is a cone which ensures that the food is fed in age order. And then cleaning is really, really simple. So I don't think probably in truth anyone cleans a peanut feeder. I never cleaned one before. So, we've enabled that to happen.
The thing that I was most impressed about, apart from the factors you've mentioned there, is the fact that you do have this kind of funnel effect inside the feeder to allow maybe 1 or 2 layers of peanuts where it's being fed. And this was something that I'd always found problematic with peanut feeders I'd had in the past, that the birds can feed from any part of the feeder, but you have this core that just doesn't get touched because they're not getting to that bit. And so, yes, it's out in all weathers, the peanuts are getting mouldy, and once again, you really risk providing contaminants to the birds. And I've thought through the years, is there a way I could get like a piece of drain pipe or something to put through my feeder just to make it, because it doesn't need to be full all the way through. It can just be like hollow in the middle. But then, you'd have to keep filling it up and everything. So this peanut feeder is brilliant in that you've got the reservoir, you've got the funnel effect sort of presenting the peanuts to the birds in a particular way so that there's no peanuts being held in the middle. They're all going to get to the outer edge at some point for the birds to feed on. So I was really excited to see that. And of course, the other thing we have to be mindful of is making sure that we get our peanuts from a good source, that they don't come already with, is it ataflaxin? There's
aflatoxins, yeah. It's a real concern. That is a fungal carcinogen which actually exists in the soil in the hot climates where peanuts are produced, and that being tested and ensured that those aflatoxins are not present is really, really important.
And it's worth checking also, so looking out to make sure that it says it's aflatoxin-free peanuts, and if they're from a good source, it will say on there that they are, but also to make sure that the peanuts themselves are sort of full-bodied, that they're not the old wrinkly ones that have been hanging around for years before they've been sold. So this has been years in the making these feeders. How has this last year been for you?
For us, it's just a year of development. We are continually trying to solve the problems that we perceive in the garden. So we don't really want our products on garden centre shelves. That's not our ambition. We need to be a centre for excellence in terms of all areas of feeding wild birds. That's our ambition. And as we bring through new products, we put ourselves in a situation where we hope will be the place to go for people that genuinely care and want to do the job right and not just do it for the sake of it. The other thing that this year has been really important to us is the issue around H5N1. I am really, really concerned about H5N1, and it is, again, an area that's swept under the carpet by the industry generally. No one really seems too concerned about it. I've seen lots of press that says, oh, the small birds don't get it, don't worry, it's not a problem. But you touched upon our food, feet and feces mantra. Well, H5N1 is a virus and it is transmitted in feces. So any bird feeder, and this includes, and it doesn't make me popular when I say this, but bird bath, you can almost guarantee that the birds will defecate in the food that they're eating. So it takes one infected bird and it's spreading beyond birds. It's not just in birds anymore, and it's worldwide. It's a really, really serious issue.
We spoke last year about whether we should be feeding garden birds at all. And it has become a key way to bring birds to the gardens so that you get to see them more closely. And I know that there's a movement to not have feeders, but to have native plants that will, provide food for birds and have the habitat, bring them in. But there is always this balance between how people keep their gardens, with many people having very manicured gardens or maybe not very much lawn at all, or in the worst case that they're using fake lawns. But having a feeder up is a way to bring nature to the garden. So we know that saying don't feed at all is going to be, it's unlikely that people will follow that. What you've just said there about the risk of contamination and illness in people is quite scary. So obviously taking very careful precautions when you are cleaning feeders. It must be very frustrating for you, having put all this work in to showing that it's quite possible to create a feeder that eliminates a lot of the risk factors that were there previously, and having the industry still blithely churn out the same old feeders as always.
It's incredibly difficult that, from our perspective, we are just a family. I mean, we're not a massively funded business. And genuinely, we are concentrating on solving the problems. Opportunities like this today, we have the opportunity to get our points of view across. You really can separate the population into two. There is a very small percentage of people that know, learn, understand, are concerned about bird feeding and generally doing these things properly. And there is the vast majority who would really be reliant on being sold safe products and not having the knowledge or finding the time or having the interest to actually learn in detail about what's going on. There is no regulation in this business. There's none. You can simply become a seller of bird feeders, a designer, a developer, whatever, and most people buy the cheapest thing they can find, put it on the shelf and make as much as they can. That's commerce, that's life, but we have to try and influence people in high places to actually take an interest in this.
Just sort of touching on where we've been last year and some of the things that we're looking to do as we move forward. One of the things we are pleased about is that we feel like we've sort of created a family of products now which covers off a lot of the challenges of supplementary feeding. Of course, we want to sell our feeders, but at the same time, we're very supportive of wild in gardens, supplementary feeding, which I do think there is an argument to say as habitat is lost, it is important that we try and help the wildlife that's suffered as a consequence. There was a report out last week from DEFRA saying that all bird numbers are just dropping across the board. I think it was to do with woodland and to do with farm birds were quite a big part of it as well. But it's obvious as we build houses, we take land away. So supplementary feeding is something that people will do as we move beyond finishing the product development, where we're fairly happy that we've sort of covered off the family of products. We really want to try and push the idea of responsibly feeding, and actually people just taking a second when they walk into the garden centre, when they have a look online at these things, just take a second. One of the things that Dad often kind of talks about is for people who've got pets, would you leave your dog or your cat bowl out in the rain to be fed from all of the animals, not to be cleaned for a week or 2 weeks or a month? We wouldn't even think twice about cleaning pet bowls. So people need to start taking those sort of steps and just thinking about what it means to be a responsible bird feeder or feeder in their gardens. And so there's some of the things that we want to try, and it is just me and Dad, so we do our best, but we hope that we've done a lot of the product development now, and we can move into a little bit more about the messaging and trying to gather a little bit of support around that. There's a lot of people who are very passionate about this sort of thing, and we want to try and reach out to them to help us share the message. So that's part of our next year's plan once some of the product development is settled down a little bit, which I think is a bit easier on Dad's bank balance as well, with a little bit less development on that side of things.
I noticed in the background while you were speaking, I couldn't help but see the birds going to your feeder. You've got a cage around the cleaner feeder. Is that to prevent squirrels getting to it?
It's a trial prototype at the moment of a squirrel and parakeet cage. So one of the things that we're testing is to try and keep off parakeets, as they are an invasive species. Big problems down in the southeast with them, and they're spreading north. They go a lot further north than just sort of London. And yes, squirrels as well. The first thing anyone ever asks us, are they squirrel proof? We don't want to pick on any animals in particular, but squirrels are proven to be very destructive to habitats and to the animals that live in them. But I've had quite a happy relationship with my 1 or 2 squirrels which come and feed on the feeder, but there is no doubt that when the squirrel goes, 20, 30 birds have been waiting to come and feed on, and the squirrel will sit on there for quite a long time feeding. So I noticed it a little bit earlier on, but the squirrel came and investigated and left empty-handed, which is part of what the trial's all about. We need to prove that squirrels won't use them or are deterred by them. We need to prove parakeets are deterred by them. And that's why we've got a couple of trial units set up with some customers in the southeast, just south of London. And also we need to prove that the birds will still use them. I'm lucky, I live quite near a woodland, so my feeders are busy. And yeah, they didn't take too long. They knew how to use the feeder and just carried on doing it. So we're pleased about that. Dad, have you got one of the guards there to demonstrate how it works?
The concept here is that we need to be able to clean the feeder really quickly in the same way that we could if the cage wasn't there. But basically, we can release the bottom to come down, and then the actual cleaning of the feeder is no different. And you can unscrew the feeder from the guard to fill it. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier about convenience. We need to make it easy for people. So it's a cage designed purely for our feeders. We're doing that for Cleaner Feeder 1 and Cleaner Feeder 2. We would hope, with the trials all going well, to actually place orders on that supplier by the end of the year. So the cages should be available around April. And that'll be for Cleaner Feeder 1 and 2.
And the difference between the 2 types is that the Cleaner Feeder 2 allows 2 different types of food in it. Is that correct?
Yeah, 2 different types of food. It's a little larger in size, so it's taller, and it comes with 2 feed stations so that you can basically just simply remove one feed station and replace it with another. So it's just a touch more comprehensive product.
I understand you've got some collaborations coming up. Are there any that you're able to speak about?
Yeah, early days. We're very confident that things are going ahead. So we're going to be live streaming video, and we're also trying to foster a relationship with a wild bird charity. Perhaps Andrew would enlarge on those.
Sure, yeah. So as you mentioned, with regard to the video, we're quite early days. Lots of people, I'm sure, will know of Kate McRae, Wildlife Kate. She has had some feeders from us in the past for testing and has had them on video. And yeah, we're hoping to set up a constant live stream with her from her new house, which has got a bit more land. We think one of the things that's really important is to actually show the feeders working. It certainly helps from the point of view of people when they're thinking about investing in something like this, to see that they are used and how they're used and how they can fit together. So again, coming to that idea of the product family, we hope to have 2 or 3 feeders online all the time. Kate will be showing those, and I think they're quite powerful. We've put some up on social media already, and as we've sort of talked about the challenges of actually getting our voice out there, getting our message out there, they're the things that do attract attention and have people asking questions like, what are these? And where can I get one? And then with regard to the charity connection, it's really important that we do kind of try and build relationships beyond just who we are and try and get that from our point of view. I'm trying to think of a different word to endorsement, but we want people to be able to look at our products and realize that it isn't just a couple of blokes trying to sell something different. We have a genuine passion for trying to help in a very challenging industry. It's part of our next year's activity, which is, as I say, a little bit more to do with trying to get the message out there and try and promote kind of what we're doing. So yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Well, I wish you every success with that. As people can tell, I've been very, very impressed with the feeders. They are extremely easy to clean, which is great on my part because I'm lazy. If I can get away with just watching birds rather than actually doing anything, obviously that's great. But I've become a better housekeeper of my garden birds, well, the products anyway, since using the cleaner feeder and obviously now with the peanut feeder. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you wanted to share while we were speaking?
I'd just like to say thank you to you, because what you do is important. And we're really pleased to be part of this, and we'll come along with some more ideas next year.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. As we'd always say, even if you don't use our feeders, then please clean your own.
Finches Friend have provided this special offer. Until the end of January 2024, listeners of the Casual Birder podcast can get 5% off any purchase with the code CASBIR5PC. Visit finchesfriend.com to see the full range. The link and that code can be found in the episode notes. The Casual Birder Bird Club, which is a virtual bird club that meets every month, has been running for nearly a year now. Sometimes we have guests coming along to tell us about various aspects of birding, but most months a group of us just get together to talk about the birds we've seen, share those birding moments that have brought us joy, and to ask questions and get help from the community. If meeting up with a group of friendly people from around the world to talk about the birds you've seen sounds like something you'd like to do, you'd be very welcome to join us. The link to signing up for the Bird Club is in the episode notes. I hope to see you at a future event. My thanks to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.